All right, kids. So before we started securitization, guys, I told you as to what is the benefit of or what is the relevance bit of capital adequacy ratio. Any bank or financial institution as such, guys, whenever they want to give more advances as such, guys, obviously they will be in need of funds. They will also have to raise more money. In case they are borrowing money as such, guys, or raising money in the form of deposits and then giving advances, guys, it is going to negatively impact their capital adequacy ratio. In order to prevent, I gave an example beta where a bank as such, guys, has deposits worth 80, has assets worth 100. In case as such beta, they are increasing their deposits by 50 and increasing their assets by 50 also. Their capital adequacy ratio earlier was 20 divided by 100. Now the capital adequacy ratio is 20 divided by 150. It is directly coming down from 20% to 13.33%. In order to prevent this from happening, guys, what the banks can actually do beta is sell off their receivables to a third entity called as SPV, special purpose vehicle. This is where securitization comes into picture. So we are not creating a borrowing on our balance sheet as such beta. Instead, what are we doing? We are reducing our advances and converting that into cash. That cash in turn as such beta will be used to further give more advances. This entire process as such beta will be called as your securitization. So in securitization, guys, what we do is, I took the example of HDFC Bank beta and they created a trust called as India Universal Trust. HDFC Bank as such, guys, first gave vehicle loans because they wanted more money to be raised. These vehicle loans were transferred to SPV called as India Universal Trust, and that India Universal Trust as such beta on the backing of those receivables issued securities to different investors, raised money. That money in turn was passed on to the HDFC Bank. So isko bolte beta securitization function. I said the three functions involved in this beta. One is origination function, the other one is pooling function, the third one is securitization function. Origination function beta is where HDFC gives vehicle loans first. Pooling function beta is creating a pool of assets that needs to be transferred, guys, to the special purpose vehicle. Securitization function is issuing securities against this pool of assets to different investors. All right, guys. The other reason why banks might enter into securitization as such beta is in case they want to concentrate on their core business, banking business. They do not want to remain invested as such, guys, in a specific loan category. They can simply transfer that as such beta to a SPV, sell it off as such, guys, so that they concentrate on their core banking business. Now, समझ में आया बेटा ये? Yes or no beta? Now, along with this beta, I also spoke about credit rating, guys, and I spoke about credit enhancement. Now, whenever we are transferring receivables as such, guys, to that SPV and the SPV is issuing securities, obviously the investors who are investing in the securities of SPV beta should know what is the risk that they are undertaking. The risk that they are undertaking as such beta will be determined using credit rating. A credit rating agency, guys, is going to check the strength of the cash flow of the underlying receivables beta and accordingly determine what is the risk that is being taken by the investors of SPV. This in turn will determine what is the return that should be provided to the SPV holders. Agar risk zyada hai beta, obviously the return will be more. If the risk is less, the return is going to be less. In our example, again, AAA rated securities were issued by HDFC beta. The SPV had a credit rating of AAA for the securities issued. That is why the yield beta was closer to 8%. Almost an yield of 8% was being provided to the investors of SPV. Next beta, credit enhancement kya hai? In order to reduce the risk, guys, of the investors of SPV, guys, I said there can be credit enhancement done. That credit enhancement is going to reduce the risk of the investors. There are two ways of credit enhancement, guys. First one is first loss facility, that is excess income spread. Excess income spread beta is where the return that is being provided to the investors of SPV, guys, is less than the return that you are realizing as such beta from the underlying receivables. Jo bhi extra income as such beta, that extra income, guys, can be used to offset any defaults of the underlying receivables. Even if there is a default, matlab 100 rupees ka agar loan hai, even if 1 rupee gets defaulted, we do not have to worry so much because we still have that excess income spread. Second loss facility, guys, is where the originator or a third party as such beta gives a credit guarantee, guys. In case there are defaults made on the underlying receivables, who will have to make the payment? The originator or the third party who has given the guarantor. Usually it is not for the entire amount, it is only for a part of the amount. That is credit enhancement. The securities that are issued by SPV, guys, are segregated into three categories. We have pass-through certificate, we have pay-through security, and then stripped securities. Under a pass-through certificate, guys, it is as if the owner of that security owns the underlying receivable itself. Whatever money is collected as such, guys, from the underlying receivables will be distributed proportionately to the holders of PTC. But even here, guys, you can divide them into different groups based on maturity period. So we gave an example of series A1, A2, A3 as such, guys, again, of securities issued by that India Universal Trust. Obviously, series A1 beta will be repaid first. After they're paid fully, series A2 will be paid. After they're paid fully, beta, series A3 will be paid. Among these three, who's taking the highest amount of risk? Series A3. A pay-through security beta is where, you can create different groups, obviously, guys, on the basis of the risk involved beta. You can have senior debt, junior debt. You can also have equity. Equity वाले को कोई fixed income नहीं रहेगा, guys. After senior debt and junior debt are paid off, whatever is the leftover income will be given off to the equity holders of that trust. Plus, but I told you, income need not be distributed as and when it is realized as such, guys. SPV can invest that amount as such beta for a temporary period and then pay off the holders only on their respective due dates rather than distributing money as and when you realize. Stripped securities beta is where, imagine the underlying loan is of 100 rupees that has been securitized and uske upar beta the loan amount, interest amount is 10 rupees every year. I can issue a security that has the backing of interest income. I can issue a security that has the backing of principal portion. The security beta that has the backing of interest portion will be called as interest only security. The security that has the backing of principal portion will have principal only security. On which security will there be higher amount of risk? Principal only security as such beta will be subject to a higher amount of risk than interest only security. These are the types of securities, guys. Now, ये हो गया पूरा process, guys. One more point, guys, here is receiving and paying agent, that is administrator. Though the loans have been transferred to special purpose vehicle, guys, I told you in real life, if we are the borrowers, we will never know that our loans have been securitized. Why? Whoever is the originator as such, guys, that is HDFC Bank in our example, we will continue to pay our repayments, so be a better loan repayments to HDFC Bank only. HDFC Bank is going to act as a receiving and paying agent. They're going to collect that amount, guys, and pass it on to the special purpose vehicle. Now, features of securitization, guys. Under the first one, beta. So we have creation of financial instruments. What do you understand by creation of financial instrument? ये side headings याद रखना बहुत जरूरी है बेटा. Do not forget to revise them on the day of examination. Creation of financial instruments, beta, is nothing but the process of securitization. Are we not issuing securities as such, guys, of the SPV? That is creation of financial instruments. What is bundling and unbundling? Bundling is creating a pool of assets. Unbundling, beta, is issuing securities as such, beta, against the backing of that pool of assets. Tool of risk management. For the bank or the financial institution that has transferred as such, guys, these receivables on a non-recourse basis, beta, you are transferring risk to the investors of the SPV in case you do it on a non-recourse basis. Structured finance. We are indirectly creating securities based on the risk return profile of the investor. Trenching matlab kya, guys? I told you the securities that are issued by SPV can be segregated into different groups. Alright, guys, it can be based on risk, it can be based on redemption period as well. Homogeneity. Within each group as such, beta, the risk return characteristics are going to be all same for each group. After that, beta, we spoke about benefits of securitization from the viewpoint of originator and from the viewpoint of the investor. From the viewpoint of originator, सबसे important advantage, beta, is that it's an off-balance sheet funding. When you say off-balance sheet funding, when you are raising money as such, guys, by issue of securitized instruments, it will not appear as a borrowing on your balance sheet. Are we clear, guys? It improves your financial ratios. How does it improve financial ratios? Because it is not appearing as a borrowing as such, beta, and we are eliminating advances, and in place of that we are showing cash, our capital adequacy ratio is not going to adversely get impacted. You can concentrate on your main core business as such, guys, and then, beta, reduce borrowing cost. Reduced borrowing cost comes as such, guys, because you are not directly borrowing as such, you are directly borrowing from the investors rather than borrowing from other financial institutions. So usually, beta, the interest rates will be lower than interest rates, beta, that would have prevailed if you would have taken a loan directly. What is the advantage as such, guys, to the investor of the SPV? Diversification, normal advantages है बेटा. Diversification of risk इसलिए guys because they have a new instrument as such बेटा in which investments can be made. Regulatory requirement सबसे बड़ा important advantage है. What is regulatory requirement? Banks as such guys are required to have exposure to priority sector lending. Minimum percentage 25% as such beta should be priority sector lending. In case a bank does not have any rural presence, or in case a bank does not have presence beta in this priority sector, they can invest in securities that are backed by such priority sector loans. This way as such beta they will comply with the regulatory requirements. The last one is protection against default. This arises only if there is credit enhancement done. If there is credit enhancement given by the originator as such guys or a third party, then the investors of the SPV as such guys will not be subject to any risk. Are we clear about this? Participants in securitization. We have divided all the participants guys into two categories. We have primary participants and secondary participants. When we talk about primary participants, we are referring to originators, special purpose vehicle and investors. Originator as such guys is usually a bank guys or an NBFC. Then beta investors guys will be other financial institutions, mutual funds, insurance companies, high net worth individuals guys. And then special purpose vehicle is registered in the form of a trust. Secondary participants mein beta we have all the ones who are facilitating the process. Just say beta the first one here that we have is obligors. Obligors are nothing but the borrowers as such guys. These borrowers are the ones who have availed those loans. And then we have rating agency. What's the work of a rating agency here? I explained in the beginning, credit rating is mandatory as such beta so that we know what is the risk that is being taken by the investors of the special purpose vehicle. Receiving and paying agent. This is nothing but a servicing and collection agent. The originator himself beta will be collecting funds guys from the borrowers and it will pass on the money to the SPV that in turn will be distributed to the investors. Agent or trustee, a trustee will be appointed guys for the special purpose vehicle who should act in the best interest of the investors. Credit enhancer guys. This is done to reduce the risk of the investors. Credit enhancement is usually done by originator himself. Structurer is the person guys who's bringing all of these parties together. Mechanism of securitization. This is nothing but the process of securitization. They do not start with origination function. They start directly with pooling function. यहाँ पे origination function के बारे में कहीं पे भी नहीं है. Pooling function beta is first creating a pool of assets. This pool of assets as such guys will be transferred to an SPV against the backing of which the SPV is going to issue securitized papers. But for all of this guys, credit rating is mandatory. So you create a pool of assets, you transfer them to SPV, you issue securities on the backing of those pool of assets and you get the credit rating of those instruments done. इसके बाद में बेटा there is administration of funds. Administration of funds मतलब the originator himself as such beta would be collecting the amount as such guys from the underlying loans. And then beta you repay as such guys these funds collected to the investors. And then in case there is a default and it is on a recourse basis or there is credit enhancement, then beta the originator will be obligated to pay additional amount. Are we clear? So there is creating a pool of assets, you transfer them to SPV, you sell securities backed by that, get it credit rated, you administer the underlying assets beta, you repay these funds to the investors, and then there is recourse to the originator. After that beta we did problems in securitization. I told you most of these problems beta are only on paper now, they do not exist in real life. First one is stamp duty. In case you are transferring the underlying receivables as such guys, it will be subject to stamp duty, and stamp duty is a state subject as such beta, which means different states can have different rates as such guys or different regulations for them. So stamp duty will be levied. Then beta taxation, I said there are no specific provisions as such beta that govern the taxing of income as such beta of the income that arises to the investors. Accounting may be better under the old accounting standards. We do not have any specific accounting principles as such beta that cover the accounting of this securitization instruments. In days beta there is crystal clear. Standardization is in respect of documentation or the contracts as such guys between the special purpose vehicle guys, originator and the investors. Lack of standardization matlab you do not have standard contracts that are there. Inadequate debt market beta, they say that India's debt market is not fully developed as such guys. The amount of money as such beta in the debt market is still substantially lower. Ineffective foreclosure laws as such guys, that is if you want to basically the loans entirely have been repaid as such guys and you want to close the trust. Securitization instruments, starting में पढ़ा दिया बेटा that you have pass through certificate, you have paid through security, you have stripped securities. Pricing of securitized instruments is pretty simple, guys. It doesn't matter whether it is from the viewpoint of originator or whether it is from the viewpoint of investor. In both the cases, remember, once you determine what is the yield as such, guys, that the investors should realize based on the credit rating, you discount all the future cash flows but at that yield and arrive at the amount that should be collected from the issue of securities. Is that clear, beta? समझ में आ रहा है प्रणव? Risk in securitization, guys, the first risk as such beta is credit risk or counterparty risk. Credit risk beta is in case the originator himself goes bankrupt as such beta, then there will be the risk of default as such beta for the investors. Legal risk as such, guys, it says we do not have any specific provisions as such, guys. So in case there are legal disputes arising, then beta the settlement of matters can take time. Market risk mein beta we have prepayment risk, we have interest rate risk, we have macroeconomic risk. When you say macroeconomic risk as such, guys, in case the entire economy is not doing well, the profitability is going to get impacted, which in turn will result in a higher amount of defaults. Or if the borrowers as such, guys, are willfully defaulting as such, guys, even that as such beta can negatively impact as such beta the yield of the investors. Prepayment risk as such beta, in case the borrowers are prepaying the amounts, when there is a decrease in the overall interest rates, it will effectively impact the yield beta that is realized by investors. Interest rate risk, agar underlying pool of assets is floating rate but the return of investors is fixed as such, guys, a change in the prevailing interest rates will effectively impact the total return of investors. Tokenization mein beta, I said about blockchain first. It says blockchain is working on the concept of distributed ledger technology where the information is not stored on any specific server but it is scattered as such, guys, on multiple systems, multiple servers as such, guys, all over the world. Every time as such beta someone wants to execute a transaction using the concept of blockchain as such, guys, the transaction will be verified by these servers called as miners as such, guys. And then once a transaction as such, guys, is verified as such beta by these systems, it is converted into a block and connected to the previous block using something called as a hash key, a key as such beta that connects it to the previous block. Because all the keys as blocks as such, guys, are connected as such beta, that is why it is called as a blockchain. It is not possible for anyone to tamper as such, guys, any of these blocks because all the blocks are interrelated, all the blocks are interlinked. Someone wants to alter, they have to go back to that block, but by that time as such beta more blocks will be created. It works on the concept of cryptography. That means, guys, once it is converted into a block as such beta, you encrypt the data as such, guys. It can only be decrypted as such, guys, by the person who possesses the key to that specific piece of information. So tokenization mein, guys, you can always convert physical assets or intangible assets as such, guys, into digital tokens. These digital tokens can be directly traded as such, guys, using the blockchain technology as such beta. Intention is very clear beta. Once you convert something into a digital token, liquidity in that increases. They can be freely traded as such, guys, using blockchain technology. This is where beta they say that tokenization should be implemented for securitized papers. So they're talking about the similarity between tokenization and securitization, that they create liquidity as such beta. When you say create liquidity, because of creating securities, guys, or tokens, the number of investors as such, guys, will increase. Trading will become easier as such beta. Diversification for the investors, it is a new piece of instrument. Are we clear, guys? Yes or no beta? So this was all about securitization. I hope that you will be revising all of this later. Chalo guys, shall we start the next topic? Securitization in India, मतलब बेटा they're basically talking about ये कि कितना business हुआ है, क्या हुआ है बोल के, who are the major players. हाँ वही I told you beta, who are the major players? HDFC Bank, HDFC Limited पहले थे guys. Usually it is banks. What is the total quantum of instruments that are happening? That information is not updated as such beta to the recent ones. That is papers. All right beta, once. So we'll take a break, guys, of 2 minutes and then I'll start the new topic. Online students, there's a break.